Hi guys, this is Morag speaking. This is our second little bit of podcasting going on here, and what I'm just going to do is discuss or chat about different subjects, but this particular subject raised its head recently with us, and it's just sort of throwing out concepts and ideas and perceptions. Now, there seems to be a bit of a debate going on at the moment on whether to clip or not to clip a horse. Now, for those of you who don't know, clipping involves removing the hair, cutting the hair off, or excess long hair, and is normally done during the winter months, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Now, again, as I've said, there's a lot of debate around the subject, whether we should clip or shouldn't clip, even in the winter. And I think the bottom line is it all depends on how much you plan to ride your horse during cold, frosty days. Now, this hair layer is Mother Nature's way of providing horses with protection that they need to survive during the winter. So, without the need of putting on an extra blanket, if you don't clip your horse, they've got their own natural insulation. And this extra thick coat will fluff up to a variety of different degrees, and there's lots of research on this, guys, and I really encourage everyone to go out there and study it. I mean, the research involved in whether or not to, or the ability that the horse has to insulate by raising and lowering its hair is very well done, and basically, it is what it is, it's scientific fact. So a lot of the problems that we find is when you put, for example, in the winter, a rug on your horse, it actually prevents them from being able to raise and lower their hair effectively, and in some cases it can actually make them feel colder. But that's, a sort of thing to bear in mind. So this is why some people don't want to clip their horses in the winter, because they want them to be able to go out, feel the air around about them, be kind of natural, and not feel inhibited by rugs which could rub, and there's lots of health reasons involved in problems in using rugs. So by not clipping, you allow the horse to be more natural in its environment. But here's where the problem lies, is if you are going to be riding them in the winter. So when your horse is worked or ridden, it's like imagine you going into the gym with your duffel coat on, or your big puffer jacket on, or wrapping a duvet around you, and then going in and trying to do a workout. You're going to sweat. Bottom line is, you're going to sweat. So it's the same for the horse. They've got this duvet of extra thick hair around their whole body, and you're asking them to work that's generating a massive amount of heat in the muscles, which in turn requires the horse to cool down and thermoregulate properly. And one of the methods of thermoregulation is sweat. Now, sweat doesn't just thermoregulate. There's lots of, I would say toxins, that's maybe too strong a word, but there's the horse it excretes substances that, are maybe not beneficial to them. So that is out in the sweat as well. So the sweat does more than just cool the horse down. So if you ride the horse without clipping them in the winter, then, they are going to sweat up. Any horse will sweat up if you're depending on how much work you're doing, but there's a high probability that they're going to sweat. So this is where the problem comes in. Do we cut some of the hair off? Do we cut all of the hair off? Do we cut some of the hair off? What do we do? Well, to be honest with you, it really depends on your level of work and what it is you're actually doing with the horse. And the reason we're cutting the hair is it's like taking away that insulation, so taking the jacket off basically, and allowing the air to circulate close to the skin so it cools. Of course, obviously in the winter the air is going to be cool, so it allows it to cool down and allows your horse to thermoregulate and not sweat as much as they would if they were wearing a full coat. So here's your problem, but if you take the hair off and take the extra blanket off, then you're going to have to replace that by putting a rug or a blanket back on your horse. So you're back to the same problem we had with the blanket issues. The horse can't fluff their coat up. So some people say allow your horse's coat to grow naturally in the autumn into the winter, and he'll grow hair capable of protecting him through most of the winter conditions. And you know what? That is absolutely right, especially if the horses are living out, or your horses are out for a large amount of time in bad weather or poor weather. Then yes, absolutely, this coat is essential to keep their internal organs warm and to keep them warm and their muscles warm. But obviously, they would be expected to have some kind of shelter, because horses can tolerate really, really cold temperatures. They can go about, I think it's about minus 40 degrees. I mean, they're really ridiculously cold temperatures. Quite happily, if they've got a full coat, they'll fluff it up and they'll be quite content, because remember, internally they've got a fermenting gut, so that fermenting gut produces a lot of heat. So they've got basically an inbuilt central heating system, and then a big duvet over the top of it, so they're pretty comfortable in cold weathers. But cold and wet weather, so when the wet weather comes, a horse usually has 2 layers in its winter coat, a soft downy underlayer, and then on top of that sort of thicker strands, and we call it the top layer or the wax layer or whatever, of an overcoat of rougher hair, which acts as a water repellent. So quite often a horse might look actually wet through the rain, but if you were to look through their coat, you'd find their skin's actually dry, because there's this downy layer underneath protecting them. So the horses are really well adapted and well designed for this kind of weather, but they have to have some form of shelter somewhere at some point where they can allow their coat to dry out, because like anything else, it's like you wearing a really good waterproof Gore-Tex jacket. There's only so much rain and water that Gore-Tex jacket can keep out, and if you allow it to dry off for short periods of time, then it'll happily carry on. But if it's continually wet, then it's going to eventually start to leak. Same with the horse's coat. So here's our sort of dilemma that's happening. So we're talking about winter months here, guys, which is normal for most horses to be clipped in the winter. But you should only clip where necessary, and only for practical purposes, not just for show, not for fashion. And this is something I want you guys to keep in your minds when you're thinking about this and how you feel about it. Now, there are some amazingly skilled people out there who can transform horses into zebras, giraffes, or an artist's palette. I mean, I take my hat off with total respect with their ability to create design on the horse's body. But is that really benefiting the horse? In truth and reality, does a horse care if it looks like a zebra? Does a horse care if it's got a Picasso clipped all over it? No. That's the human that cares about that. That's the human showing off. So I want you to just think carefully about that. Is it practical for the horse? Absolutely not. Now remember, if you do rug your horse before the winter coat's through, that'll keep their coat pretty thin. And depending on how you keep your horse, if they're in a stable or fuel kept or between the two, it is possible to work them pretty hard without clipping them, because remember, the fitter a horse gets, the less they will sweat, because the pores aren't blocked with fats and other sort of detritus. So when the horse starts to sweat, instead of it being that foamy shaving cream, look, they'll just be clear water. That's the normal sweat. That's sweat from a fit, healthy horse. Yeah. So the fitter they are, the less they'll sweat. And hey, listen, you might be lucky. You might have some really good thin-coated horse who could work for an hour and a half, and barely even think about a sweat. Heck, I've seen me sweating more in the back of my horses than my horses are underneath me. So it all depends on the type of horse and what we're actually doing with them. But if you've got a horse, for example, and this is a difficult one, because we've done an experiment with that. I had read research that the sort of going trend is, if your horse is overweight in the winter, one of the best ways to get them to lose weight is to give them a full clip, i.e. shave all the hair off, maybe leave their hairy legs, but that's about it. And minimal rugging, just rugging to keep them dry. And the theory being that they have to burn off their stored fat reserves to keep warm. And we did that quite, we've got a few sort of weight challenged, don't like to call them fat, gives them a complex. So we're weight challenged horses, and it does work. I'm not going to deny it, absolutely it does work, but you do feel so bad about doing it. However, one winter I'd read an article that said that if the horse is clipped like that, then they'll actually gain weight because their body's frantically trying to lay down fat reserves to insulate because they've lost their insulating layer of hair. And I thought, that sounds logical. I only read one article on it. I didn't know how deep the research was, and this is a wee warning bells to you guys. Look at the research, look at different sort of facts, follow the trail. How factual is this? And that's what I didn't do. So one winter we did not clip any of our horses deliberately. We carried on working them, and that was an absolute nightmare. It happened to be a mild winter, and our stables are pretty warm. They're wooden stables, so they're quite warm, generate a lot of heat. And our horses were actually sweating standing in the stable. And this caused their hair to get into mats. It made them uncomfortable. It made them itchy. It was basically a complete disaster. And our horses actually looked as though they gained weight, because the problem being, with a big thick hairy coat, it was kind of difficult for us to do a proper condition score. So they actually gained weight. So that's out the window. I've went back to doing clipping for the the weight challenged, giving them a serious clip. So this is things to sort of think about why you're wanting to do it. So if your horse isn't clipped and they don't have a thick coat and you can work them and they might sweat a little bit, you can just put a rug on them, like a sweat rug, like a waffle rug or a fleece, which will wick the moisture away and still keep the horse warm, allow their coat to dry. And especially if you're on full livery, somebody else will do that, but you can put the rug on and somebody will take the rug off or change them about. And you just basically brush the hair loose and get them so the horse can fluff them up again so it's not encrusted with sweat. So there is options to do that. But you might also have a horse that you want to work that struggles to keep weight on and has a really thick coat. Now here's your dilemma. He's got a thick coat, sweats a lot, because you want to work him, but struggles to keep weight on. You don't want to give him a complete shave all over, because then he's going to be cold and he's going to drop weight. So what do? Well, there are different clips that you can use. Most clips are designed to only take the hair from the areas where the horse will predominantly sweat. So you're looking at the neck, shoulders, sometimes down the flanks or the belly or around hindquarters, depending how much work you do. So there are different variations of clip, things that you can do. If you've got a horse that struggles to keep weight on, leave the hair on the top half of his body or the top line on the legs and the quarters. So you could do what's called, for example, a bib clip. A bib is, as it sounds, like a baby's bib. Only the front of the chest and up the neck to the jawline is clipped. The rest of the horse is left hairy. I would always start with that and see how we get on if you wanted to keep the horse with a hairy coat. If that's not working, then you could maybe progress to a low chaser clip. So this is where the lower half of the neck, the chest and the lower half of the belly are clipped in a sort of diagonal line from the back of their jaw down to their flank, to their stifle. And that is ideal for horses. Bibs and low chasers are ideal for horses that live out but are worked. So you can still put their waterproof rugs on top of that. They still get enough hair on to keep warm, and you're going to minimise the risk of the tying up with the sweating, etc. So you can do a variation of the chaser clip, a high chase, which is much higher up the sides of the horse, and you can take half the face off with that. That's more for a horse that I would say would be coming in at night, so has more protection. But is doing a lot of work, so they're obviously needing to keep their body as cool as possible. Now your trace clip is similar to the high chaser, but this time it's in a straight line. It comes down the neck, then from the point of shoulder straight across the body to the point of buttocks is a straight line. So basically it's like a half and half. Your horse has got like a half and half cut. So again, that's ideal. It keeps the horse warm enough because all the vital organs, the kidneys, the top of the back, the area that's going to be most exposed to wind and rain is still protected. But you've cleared enough of the hair off so that the horse can actually be worked and should not be sweating, maybe a little bit under the saddle, but not horrifically. Now, the next two clips I'm going to talk about, I would only be doing on a horse that is really stabled 24/7, rugged up, and is in hard work. Very few. Now, with the best will in the world, guys, you might think your horse works hard. Trust me, 1 hour a wee toodle up the road once a week is not working hard. Our horses are living in their lap of luxury. When the horse was used for actual work, they could be working for 14 hours a day. So trust me, our horses are not hard work unless you're competing, either professional eventing, show jumping, you're hunting maybe 3 or 4 days a week, or you're racing, things like that. That would be classed as hard work for the horse to be hard fit. So for that kind of work, the horse is going to be generating a lot of heat through muscle movement and muscle action. So we would have, traditionally, there's the hunter clip, where most of the hair and the body hair is clipped away. You just leave a small patch in the shape of a numna or a saddle on their backs. You leave the hair on their legs for protection, and you can either have half a face or a full face clip on that as well. Then you have the full clip, and this is where every bit of winter hair is removed, including the legs and the face. Now, you can do variations of these clips, obviously, but you have to kind of think carefully about what clip do I want to give the horse and why do I want to do it, yeah? And my golden rule personally is start small and build up to it. Yes, start with a bib and see how you get on, and then take a little bit more off as you go along. So that's normal clipping. This is winter clipping, which is what clipping was done for. And that was why clipping was done, okay? And I'm stressing this really, really strongly here, because here's my dilemma. Recently, and for anyone of the same sort of age group as myself, you will have seen a trend, and I'm saying it's a fashion trend, where clipping is now being done all year round. For what purpose is beyond me, to be honest with you. I know that if you were competing at a high level, travelling your horses a lot in the box, travelling in the box, the horses get hot, then yes, I could see by shaving off the very thin coat of hair that your horse would have grown for the summer coat, shaving that off, I mean literally it's like fluff that comes off. There's the hair so short. That just takes the coat even shorter, so keeps the horses, in theory, a little bit cooler. But these horses are stabled pretty much 24/7 and are out competing and travelling for long periods of time. That's why that was done. But it seems to be a fashion that's grown within the horse world, whereby, and we've seen it before, where people will buy equipment to make themselves look like they are competing professional, competing at a high level, and they like do maybe a show once a year or compete unaffiliated at very, very beginner level, but they like to create an image, and I think this is all down a lot to social media. So, they have an image. What's on social media is not really the truth. And this fashion now is, my horse has to be clipped through the summer as well. Well, actually, no, they don't. Unless your horse has a medical condition, and there are some horses with medical conditions. For example, some horses that are cushionied don't lose their winter coats, keep a big thick coat, and obviously they are very hot and uncomfortable in the summer. So you have to step in where nature hasn't stepped in and remove that hair to allow the horse to be cool. I totally agree with that. Absolutely no issues with that at all. Where my issues lie are people that are doing it for fashion. Because so-and-so said that they do. I just clip them in the summer because they don't sweat. Well, yes, they do. Even a clipped horse will sweat. Even a clipped horse in the winter will sweat. It's easier to clean the sweat off of clipped hair than it is to clean it off of a long winter coat. Your horses need to sweat. It's a natural bodily function. Horses need to sweat. So to excrete toxins, to keep cool, there's a whole load of stuff that sweat's involved in. So for somebody to say, if you don't want your horse sweating, just clip them. Well, why? Do you know what I mean? In the summer, I don't get it. Personally, I'm struggling to get my head around about it. However, I'm not condoning people to do it. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. But I find it very, very odd and a very strange thing. Now, obviously, there are people who maybe show their horses, and again, if they're showing the horses at high level, they could be travelling for long periods of time, and the horses are arriving at the showground pretty sweaty, and that's going to drag your marks down. So yeah, I can understand that at professional level or at high level that you might have to do things like that, especially if your horses have a breed that even their summer coat is quite is longer than most. Like for example, like for a thoroughbred has virtually no summer coat, but you know, like more native breeds that are designed and evolved to live in Arctic conditions will have a slightly maybe longer coat. It's more obvious that they've got hair on their body. But really, it's for most people in the horse world, for most people, the level of riding that we do, really, is it necessary? You know, and at the end of the day, if you're showing a native, I'm not in the showing world, so I don't really know the ins and outs, but I'm pretty sure that if you're showing a native and you should not be clipping them. The key word there is native. They should be looking like the horse is adapted to survive in the environment that they are bred for. So it's just a thing that I really wanted to throw out there to people to please think about what you're doing. Don't jump on the fashion bandwagon. Heck, if that was the case, if you think back to just over 100 years ago, it was fashionable to cut the ears and the tails off of horses because that was fashion, you know. And what you could argue, and I'm saying it obviously, and I don't mean to offend anybody who does do clipping, but you know, is that what we're doing now? Is that what we're actually doing to the horses? Is this, you know, in the summer? I can understand in the winter. I get it. I totally understand. I understand for horses that have medical conditions. I get that. I understand for horses who are competing at really high level and are uncomfortable travelling those long distances with a thick coat on. I get that as well. But really, for your average horse owner with their horses, you know, for leisure horses, as I would call them, or pleasure horses, that might do the odd thing here and there, but are not working every single day of the week. The horses aren't overworked, they're not worked hard. And let's be honest, if the horse is slightly, I'm going to say it again, overweight or weight challenged, even the lightest bit of work will cause that horse to sweat. I know that I'm a bit weight challenged, and if I went to a gym, by jingo, you better believe I would sweat. But if somebody is fit, lean, and really healthy and up for it, they could do a fair bit of gym work and not even break a sweat. So I think, guys, we need to all take a step back and stop being led into fashion because that's what everybody else does. Well, if everybody else jumped off a cliff, would you be following them to do it? You know, look at your horse, look at what you're doing, think about why you're doing it, and the key word here, guys, is it benefiting my horse? Is there any benefit to my horse for me doing this? And if the cons outweigh the pros for it, then you need to step back and say, well, this should not be about me. It should be about my horse. And I shouldn't care what Joe Blogs down the road thinks. Oh my goodness, she doesn't clip her horse in the summer. How atrocious. I don't care. You think that if you want. It doesn't affect me. If my horse is happy and I'm happy, then where's the problem? I don't get it. So, I'm so sorry, guys. I've just on a bit of a rant there. But it'd be interesting to hear any of your thoughts on this and what you guys feel about it, because maybe I'm old-fashioned. Maybe I need to move with the times. Maybe there's research and information out there that I'm not aware of, and you know, I need to change my thoughts on it. Maybe this is what we need to do now in the summer. I don't know. So I'm just going to end on that note, and please feel free to make any comments, any thoughts, any opinions on it, because if there is research and I'm wrong and I need to change how I'm thinking, I'm happy to do it. More than happy to do it. I try to keep an open mind, and I do try to move with the times and not get stagnated. But guys, if this is only getting done for fashion and trends, is it right? I don't know. What do you think?